It's time for the Phil Ferguson Show.
This is Phil Ferguson, and you are listening to The Phil Ferguson Show. I am in a bit of a mood today. Started off pretty good, but I'm driving my new little Bolt and pulling up to an intersection, and right at the last second, someone drives around me on the right, in the shoulder, and it's at an intersection where it's a one-lane road, and it splits to a left turn lane, or if you want to keep going straight or right, it becomes the right-hand lane. And so right as I'm about to get over, they had figured out that if they punched it, they could get around me, and we almost sideswiped. So I was not amused. All of this, of course, so they can gain one car length ahead of me. And of course, it would be bad to damage my car and or damage their car. And of course, people can get hurt. So it was very odd a feeling to be driving along knowing there's a car behind you, and then all of a sudden a car appears next to you where they shouldn't be, because they're driving off the road illegally right as I'm trying to get over. So that was kind of annoying. Another fun thing, speaking of the Bolt and hybrid cars and Teslas, I was actually very pleasantly surprised that I had a lot of emails from Tesla owners that were very gentle and very compassionate and understood my different perspective and why I chose the Bolt over the Tesla. However, I did have a few people who were also very nice point out that I had fucked something up. So here I am telling you I fucked something up. I don't know how I fucked it up. I thought I checked this 2, 3, 4 times, but without a doubt, I was wrong. The lowest price point Tesla you can buy today is not $49,000 to $50,000. It is indeed $42,900. I thought for a fact, I would have bet money on it, that when I went to the website, that car was not an option. But when I went back and checked, it was. So I don't know, user error. I'll take full responsibility for doing that wrong. So you can apparently today buy a Tesla for $42,900 before discounts and rebates. So I had to put in that correction. But as far as the Bolt, and enjoying it very much, we did a 200-mile drive, my wife and I, and we got back and plugged it into the house. And of course, the low-level charging rate in a house for that size battery pack, it was going to take about 60 hours to charge. That's right, 60 hours to charge. And that's no different than any other hybrid car or any other electric car, including a Tesla. If you just plug it into the wall outlet, it's going to take a long time. So I have an electrician coming later today, and we're going to find out how much it costs to put in either a different outlet or a wall-mounted unit that I can then plug into the car and charge the car at a faster rate. And that would take about 9.5 hours to charge the car if it's completely run down to zero. So for me, for the most part, I will be driving this car all around Chicago. Probably the longest drive I'll do is down to Champaign to visit my kids, where I know there's several chargers and I can add fuel, energy, electricity for a few hours and then drive back with plenty of miles to spare. But going long distance is not my plan. And even in a Tesla, which does charge considerably faster, it gets to be a bit of a challenge to take a car across the country, because you cannot top it off in 5 minutes. It will take a good 30, 60, 90 minutes, 120 minutes to charge it up. So you have to understand what you've got and what it can do. But for my day-to-day life, I can drive that car all over Chicagoland, day after day, week after week, month after month. I mean, quite frankly, how often do most people drive across the country? And if you do it very often, don't buy an electric car unless you want to spend the extra time to do it. But I got one because it's incredibly efficient, and I don't buy gasoline anymore for that car. And there's other things like I'll never do the brakes. It doesn't have a radiator. I don't have to do oil changes. There's fewer moving parts. There's no belts. There's no timing chain. Hopefully, fingers crossed, over the lifetime of the car, it's a cheaper car to run. And I just couldn't walk away from the $7,500 tax credit plus the extra $4,000 I got from my GM credit card, and of course the discounts that GM was offering to try to sell enough of these things by the end of the quarter because their tax credit falls on April 1st. So anyway, a whole bunch about the car. Another thing that I've got, I get, like I said, all these emails. I got this new thing. I've never heard of this before, but I thought I'd share it with you really briefly here. What did they call this? Oh, it's a buffered index fund. Okay, so for me, I'm kind of weird like this, but as soon as you do something other than being an index fund, you are not a fucking index fund. An index fund buys everything in that index, whether it's stocks, bonds, international, domestic, whatever the index is, you buy that index and you set it and you forget it. You buy and hold. That's what you do. As soon as it becomes index plus or some other weird thing, it's not a fucking index fund. It's a gimmick, schmimmick, whatever. It's something I'm not interested in unless it has a long track record of doing well. And it's probably not going to, because almost everything that involves you spending more time, effort, and expense thrashing around trying to beat the index is self-defeating. But I got this email, and I'm going to read to you a little bit of this. This is just general sales schmails. I don't know where that's coming from. I hate this stuff. Fucking hate it with a passion. So here's the email. I'm speaking with many advisors who are interested in a strategy that seeks to protect against the first 10% of downside in the S&P 500 while providing upside participation up to a cap. Really? Are a lot of advisors looking for that? Really? I'm not fucking looking for that because I know how that game is played. If that sounded like the shit that you get promised in an annuity, there's a reason for that. And so they are gaming a mutual fund, and so it's not a bunch of things that they have to buy and sell. You as an individual can buy one mutual fund. And I don't know if this mutual fund pays an advisor. Let's see here. Does it have a front end load? Pulling up on Morningstar.com. 1 second. Good radio here. Yeah, we're just stalling. Doesn't say it has a load. The expense ratio is about 1%. But what it does is it buys hedges against the market going down. And so the promise is that when the market goes down, you're not going to lose anywhere near as much. And in the email, they promote to me the fact that in 2018, the U.S. stock market, as measured by the S&P 500, went down around 4.4%. This fund only went down 2.2%. So losing half as much sounds cool, especially when they're promising you're going to make most of the upside potential. So if you can make most of the upside, and when the market goes down, you only lose half, that's a sexy sales pitch. I just know historically it doesn't work. When I built this on Morningstar, and here's the fund, it is BUIGX. You can go do it yourself. Morningstar.com, put in BUIGX. When I pulled up, it's only slightly over 2 years old, this fund. So I don't like new funds because you can make 100 new funds and 4 or 5 of them happen to do well for a year, and now you promote the shit out of those. It doesn't mean they're any better. It's like a person that flips heads 5 times in a row. Doesn't mean they're gifted at flipping coins. It just means they got lucky. So beware of that. But I looked, it was started in 2016, late 2016, but 2017 it has a full track record year. And the S&P 500 for 2017 made about 22%, and this fund made 12%. So when the market went up 22%, it made 12%. You lost 10 points on the upside. yay, I was protected 2 points on the downside, but I lost 10 points on the upside. For 2019 year to date, the S&P 500 is up 8% and this fund is up 4%. So you've already lost another 4% this year. This stuff doesn't work. And since I'm already riled up and like I said, I'm in a mood, I get this email and I'm just like, who the fuck do these people think they are? I don't know. Do they not understand how the world works, or do they not care? Do they really think they've got the tiger by the tail? Do they think they've figured out a better mousetrap? Do they think that this is going to be something that's cool? Or is it a gimmick that they think they can sell and they can hustle and they can convince advisors to sell to their clients because it's got a sexy sales pitch and everybody makes money, except for the individual investor? And maybe you make money, but you don't make as much. And that bothers me because I think every single advisor should have the fiduciary requirement, and their obligation should be to not necessarily make you the most money, but make you the most money with reasonable risk, because it's not always about making the most. Sometimes it's about being able to sleep at night. So anyway, rant over. We've got an interview coming up a little bit later on about a new book that I think you're going to enjoy. We've got the actual official Investing Skeptically segment coming up. So still a lot to go in the show, and we'll hear more of it right after this little break. This Investing Skeptically segment is inspired by an email that I received from a listener, and they had questions about a term that I used, and they were trying to do some research on it. And the phrase that I use is market neutral. And so the question was, what do I mean about market neutral? And they did some research and found websites that have numbers different than me. So instead of giving you both of the numbers and confusing it even more, I want to go over what I mean by saying market neutral. So it refers to the United States stock market only. It does not include international stocks. It does not include bonds of any kind. It doesn't include real estate of any kind. It's just simply the United States stock market. Every single stock that's publicly traded in the United States of America, the total stock market. The closest thing to this in reality is, and my preference, is the Vanguard Total Stock Market Index Admiral Shares, which is VTSAX. And so you can look at all the stocks or the total stock market index, and you can categorize all the stocks within inside of it into 9 different categories. And these categories were created, I think, first by Morningstar, and it's often referred to as the Morningstar style box, which of course you could Google and learn endless amounts about it. And it's a series of 9 boxes that are stacked kind of like a tic-tac-toe grid or a hashtag grid. 3 across the top, 3 down, 3 by 3, a total of 9 boxes. The top 3 boxes are large cap. The middle 3 are middle cap, mid cap, and the bottom 3 are small cap. And then from left to right, it goes from value to growth. In the middle is blend. And those are stocks that don't really easily fit into value or growth, although one can make a decision and go, this one's value, this one's growth. When I do my U.S. market matrix, I do not use 9 funds. I use 6 because I'm not really interested in the blend, that middle column, the vertical column, because I'm making my own kind of unique mix with growth and value in different proportions. So I don't need a blend position. So I have 6 funds, kind of like the 6 dots on a die. When you look at it and the 6 dots are up, those 6 dots are kind of how I visualize it. The Morningstar style box has 9 dots. So it's those 6 dots with 3 more dots in the middle, up and down. So what does it mean by market neutral? Well, I'm currently thinking about, or my current idea, my current philosophy, in short, is having about 60% large cap and 40% mid cap and small cap combined. And you can break that down more nuanced. And again, with a smaller portfolio, under 200,000, under 100,000, it gets to be less and less important because the little tweaks that you're doing have less opportunity to be valuable. So you have to balance off the amount of effort and the amount of time that you want to do with this versus what the reward is going to be. But with a larger portfolio, I will definitely break it down into the 6 different index funds, and I pay attention to that very closely. And so the first thing that you can look at is the total stock market index. It will be, by definition, the entire United States stock market. Again, that fund is VTSAX. That's the Vanguard Total Stock Market Fund. And it has about 76% of all the money in large cap stocks. It has about 18% in mid cap stocks. And then it has about 6% in small cap stocks. That fund represents, and is a good way for you to check, what market neutral is. And so if you have index funds or mutual funds or individual stocks in the proportions, in the weightings that the Vanguard Total Stock Market Index has, you could say that your portfolio is market neutral. So if the entire market moves up 5%, you're going to move up 5. If it goes down 5, you're going to lose 5. You have weightings of large cap versus small cap, growth versus value that are neutral to what the market itself has. That's market neutral. Right now, I'm kind of leaning towards the large cap and other split being closer to 60-40. I wouldn't even mind it being 58-42. Well, if market neutral has large cap at 76%, one could ask, why am I at 60 or 58? And there's a couple of different reasons for that. One, large cap stocks over the last several years, up to including 10 and maybe even longer, have done better than mid cap and small cap stocks, which can tend to lead people to put more money there or have more money there. But as part of my regression philosophy and contrarian philosophies that I use, I want to not be caught in the neutral weighting or even in overweighting. So if 10 years ago you put 75% of your money in large cap stocks, you will have probably now more than 75%. I don't know exactly. It might be 80 or 82 or 87. But if the market corrects, or that those segments of the market, if large caps underperform over the next period of time, you could really feel the hurt if all of your money is in large cap stocks. So again, to match the market, you want to be in market neutral. I, however, am thinking I want to kind of hedge against the success of large cap stocks, and I'm overweighting in mid cap and small cap. And even there, with a large enough account, I'm overweighting in small cap more than the market neutral position of mid cap. I think that made sense. So the 60-40 split would be 60% in large cap, 40% in everything else, which is often called the extended market, or you can have a mid cap and small cap fund that make up that 40%. Again, because large cap has done so well, I'm kind of hedging out of that and more in the small and mid cap. A second reason is that historically, theoretically, one makes more money, a higher annual rate of return with small cap and mid cap. Hasn't worked out that way for the last few years, but historically, it's generally accepted by academics in the industry that study this, that small caps, mid cap stocks tend to make a little bit more. They also tend to be a little more volatile, going up and down at greater percentages. So you don't want to have too much of that because you can increase your portfolio volatility while increasing the theoretical long-term return. So the question is, how much do you want? So I'm overweighting from the neutral position of about 26%, 24% in mid and small to 40. And so I want to shy away from the large caps, which have done really well. I want to have more money where I think theoretically, hopefully, fingers crossed, you'll do a little bit better with the mid caps and the small caps. And also it can kind of in a way increase your diversification. Now, if your weighting's off a little bit You're still highly diversified because you own a whole lot of everything. But if you have 80% of your money in large cap, the next thing you have to be very, very careful is to make sure that it's equally-ish split up between growth and value. Personally, I lean to a few points extra in value over growth because, again, growth has done so well. And one of the problems I see is people coming to me with portfolios that have not only a lot of large cap stocks, but a lot of large cap growth stocks that have done incredibly well in recent history. Will they repeat? If they do, you're going to be fine. You're in the golden spot. But if they don't, and things often change, you could be in the segment of that 9 grid box, Morningstar style box. You could be in the segment that gets killed in the next downturn. And maybe it doesn't, but maybe it does. And if it does, and the other segments go up, you don't want to have too much weighted there. So I'm hoping that made sense to somebody. Let me know. Send me emails, Phil@Polaris Financial Planning, and I can try to give you a link or talk more about it. But it's the Morningstar style box. The Vanguard Total Stock Market Index does represent market neutral, which has the vast majority, 3/4 of all U.S. stock market money in large cap. I like 60% at this point in time, and that changes some over time. Like I said, I could even be happy with 58. So the longer that large cap does better than everything else, the less of it I want to own. So hopefully that helped you understand my use of the phrase market neutral and the Morningstar style box.
I'm sorry, but I don't want to be an emperor. That's not my business. I don't want to rule or conquer anyone. I should like to help everyone if possible. Jew, Gentile, black man, white. We all want to help one another. Human beings are like that. We want to live by each other's happiness, not by each other's misery. We don't want to hate and despise one another. In this world, there's room for everyone, and the good earth is rich and can provide for everyone. The way of life can be free and beautiful, but we have lost the way. Greed has poisoned men's souls, has barricaded the world with hate, has goose-stepped us into misery and bloodshed. We have developed speed, but we have shut ourselves in. Machinery that gives abundance has left us in want. Our knowledge has made us cynical, our cleverness hard and unkind. We think too much and feel too little. More than machinery, we need humanity. More than cleverness, we need kindness and gentleness. Without these qualities, life will be violent, and all will be lost. The aeroplane and the radio have brought us closer together. The very nature of these inventions cries out for the goodness in men, cries out for universal brotherhood, for the unity of us all. Even now, my voice is reaching millions throughout the world, millions of despairing men, women, and little children, victims of a system that makes men torture and imprison innocent people. To those who can hear me, I say, do not despair. The misery that is now upon us is but the passing of greed, the bitterness of men who fear the way of human progress. The hate of men will pass, and dictators die, and the power they took from the people will return to the people. And so long as men die, liberty will never perish. Soldiers, don't give yourselves to brutes, men who despise you, enslave you, who regiment your lives, tell you what to do, what to think, and what to feel, who drill you, diet you, treat you like cattle, use you as cannon fodder. Don't give yourselves to these unnatural men with machine minds and machine hearts. You are not machines. You are not cattle. You are men. You have the love of humanity in your hearts. You don't hate. Only the unloved hate. The unloved and the unnatural. Soldiers, don't fight for slavery. Fight for liberty. In the 17th chapter of St. Luke it is written, the kingdom of God is within man, not one man nor a group of men, but in all men, in you. You, the people, have the power to create machines, the power to create happiness. You, the people, have the power to make this life free and beautiful, to make this life a wonderful adventure. Then in the name of democracy, let us use that power. Let us all unite. Let us fight for a new world, a decent world, that will give men a chance to work, that will give youth a future and old age a security. By the promise of these things, brutes have risen to power, but they lie. They do not fulfill that promise. They never will. Dictators free themselves, but they enslave the people. Now let us fight to fulfill that promise. Let us fight to free the world, to do away with national barriers, to do away with greed, with hate and intolerance. Let us fight for a world of reason, a world where science and progress will lead to all men's happiness. Soldiers, in the name of democracy, let us all unite!
The Phil Ferguson Show is for educational purposes only. Nothing said on the show should be interpreted as personalized investment advice. Your investments should be based on your situation, and you should consult with your financial advisor before taking any action. The show may contain ads. These ads are placed into the show by the hosting company after I finish recording and editing. I have little control over the content of the ads, and you should not assume that I support their products or claims. If you choose to support the show via the new Patreon page, that support does not create an advisor-client relationship. All right, everybody, welcome back. This is, of course, Phil Ferguson, and you're listening to my goddamn show, The Phil Ferguson Show. With me today, I have Sid Brixton. Sid, how are you today?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you doing, Phil?
I'm always doing pretty darn good. So it's a good day, and we're going to talk some about a book that you put out. And listeners, I want to direct you to this, and of course, I'm going to recommend it, but we're going to talk about it some more. It's called A God of Memes, and again, it's by Sid Brixton. But before we get to the book, Sid, I know you have a interesting background with family and religion and stuff. Why don't you walk us through a little bit of that before we jump into the book?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for having me on, Phil. Yeah, that definitely is a huge reason why I decided to write the book. So I've been involved in atheism now for probably about 10 years. And, I wanted to do some kind of activism because of the way that I grew up. So I did grow up in a very, very conservative, fundamentalist, evangelical family. And I think I had maybe a different sort of deconversion than a lot of people that I've talked to. I was 10 years old, and I guess I just sort of woke up or came online or something and realized that, holy shit, I'm in a cult, at a young age, at 10 years old.
Wow.
Yeah. So I guess it's been sort of a lifelong thing.
Now, when you say cult, what was the name of this cult? The Catholic Church? Some other name?
The name would be Evangelical Christianity.
Oh, okay. Fair enough.
Right. It's a very well-known, very well-respected.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure I understood how broadly you were applying the word cult.
Right.
What specific brand of Christianity were you in?
Yeah, that's the thing. They always claim that they were non-denominational, which really is a cover for we're kind of culty and we're not really responsible to anybody else.
Yes.
So my dad and a couple of his friends actually started a tiny church when I was about 8 years old. And, when I was a kid, when I was still like believing, probably 8 or 9 years old, it was kind of fun. I mean, it was the 1970s. There were, Jesus freaks and their guitars and their sandals, and everyone stayed at our house all the time. But when I got a little bit older, it became very clear that you are not allowed, to have your own opinions, to think your own thoughts, to think outside their little box whatsoever.
So what were some of the beliefs in this little culty church independent thing?
I guess it wasn't, it was basically your mainstream evangelical beliefs.
Okay.
Creationism, the young earth, that kind of thing. But more insidious, and this is why I call it a cult, more insidious than that is their dogma that everybody who doesn't believe just like we believe is a terrible, terrible human being, just a complete waste. Our church is the very best church. It's better than the one down the street.
Right.
Our religion is the best religion. It's better than anything. All the other religions are lies. And they had a word for the other, which is the world. The world is evil and terrible and crooked and all that kind of stuff.
Wow. And so at a pretty young age, you started seeing through this. How does that work for a 10 or 11-year-old when your family runs the church?
It was super, super painful. So this was probably the late 70s. So there was no internet. There was no one else to talk to or turn to. All of our, friends and family and everybody were all in it to some degree or another. So it's like I had this secret when I was growing up. And the culty thing about it, too, is that they're always constantly looking for people who maybe aren't doing so well or having doubts, or maybe there's a new person and they're constantly locked onto that person. How you doing? Are you having, they want to know what your psychological state is so that, if there's a problem, they can intervene quickly. And so I grew up in this weird way where I had this secret, but I had to pretend that I was a believer at a very early age, because I knew that if they knew that I thought, if I had doubts or, I didn't believe what they were saying, that, my dad would send me to Jesus camp or something,
Wow.
Or get kicked out or something.
Yeah. Now, were they, you had to be baptized as an adult, or was it done as a child? What were some of the rules?
Yeah, so they did believe, they thought everything that they believed was biblical.
Yeah, of course.
So they had this, yeah, right. They had this concept of you have to know what you're doing. You have to come to the age of understanding first. Right. And to them, it was 7 for some reason. I guess at 7, you're ready.
Yeah, you know everything.
Yep. Actually, my parents baptized me when I was 5 first. You have to repeat the sinner's prayer and all that kind of stuff. And then again at 7 or 8 or something like that. And it's just they just go to a swimming pool or better yet, they would go to a public place so that everybody can see what they're doing.
Yeah, because you don't want to be shy. I mean, it's not like Jesus told us to go home and pray in our closets.
Absolutely not. You got to put yourself out there.
You got to put yourself out. And so you played along for a while. Obviously, since you're an activist now, you got out at some point. When was that? So this is where the story gets complicated, because it's really quite painful. When I was coming up, I had no emotional equipment to deal with this whatsoever. There was no one to talk to. So I just learned how to sort of stuff everything. And I got more and more angry, when I became a teenager. And so it caused me a lot of problems, a lot of emotional problems, a lot of psychological problems. And so when I was probably about 15 or 16, no, actually earlier than that, maybe 15, I discovered punk rock. Yeah. From then on, I was like, fuck you. I can't keep this in anymore. I punked out, right? Combat boots and torn jeans and any kind of shirts or anything that would piss off my parents and everybody. So I had really tumultuous teenage years and a lot of problems too. Anyways, it was pretty bad. What can I say about that? Now, at some point, you must have moved out. When did your parents learn that you weren't buying it? Or
I think
they?
they're kind of suspecting by 14, 15.
Okay.
They had this weird notion, I think when I was 15 or 16, that, the religion says you're supposed to freely choose the religion, and so they, right around 15 or 16, they decided, well, Sid's not, he can make up his own mind now, so we won't make him go to church. And the second they did, I'm like, I'm fucking staying home. I'm not participating in anything. Right.
Oh,
And
you had the nice out there. That's cool.
yeah, but they tried to revoke it later. They're like, "Oh shit, we made a mistake. Like, let's try to force them back."
So that wasn't taking. How is the relations now with the family?
It's pretty strained. I guess I should say, maybe I shouldn't gloss over this part, but when I was a teenager, I got into a lot of trouble, drinking and like all kinds of stuff. I want to say I hung out with the bad kids, but I was also the bad kid. So I had a really rough time of things. I had like a massive like drinking problem and all kinds of stuff like that. But when I came out of that, I think like in my early 20s and started to like put my life back together, I tried to repair things, with people and especially my parents. But the problem is like you can repair relationships with people who are reasonable about like who you are and what you've been through and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But a religious family will never do that because you're not one of them. You're not in the cult. So that means if you're doing well, it's like, well, yeah, but, so what? And if you're doing bad, it's like, I told you.
Yeah.
You're not going to do well.
So this book, now, before we get into it and before I let you talk about it.
Sure.
I of course, read the whole thing, but when I started, it was very clear that this was an analogy to Christianity, and I was really afraid for a minute the whole book was going to be like that. Listeners, keep in mind, that's not what happens.
Yeah.
And then it started to develop this really interesting story, and I'm so concerned about what I want to say because it has a twist, and then another twist, and then like 75% of the way through or 80% of the way, a whole nother layer of twist. And I was like, oh my God, I did not see that coming. But you were able to write it with enough quality and style that I often could visualize the scenes that they were in. So that's kind of cool.
Cool. Yeah, I'm glad you enjoyed that. Yeah. I wanted to keep people on their toes. I did want, to answer your question, I did start off with Christianity in mind. Actually, I have Christianity in mind through most of the book, but as it goes through, it kind of gets more and more degenerated. It's not quite so specific. It starts to generalize out to, the meme or the religion virus thing could be almost anything, right?
Right.
Yeah, you picked up on the fact that I twisted it. That was actually one of the main goals I had, was to take a real close look at Christianity because, like, how strange is Christianity really? I mean, in the Western world, we're so used to it. When I was growing up, I had a friend in high school who his family came over from India. And when he was in high school, he started wearing a necklace with a cow on it, like a religious cow.
Sure.
I remember, he's just trying out different identities or whatever. And some of the kids were like, oh my God, that's so weird that like Hindus worship cows. Like, that's so weird that you would wear that. And then he's like, yeah, but around your neck, that necklace is a Roman torture device, sometimes with a bloody tortured man on it.
Right. So it's a weird thing, and the story, twisted it, separated it enough that it's obviously, blatantly bull, but I could also see why the characters, or at least some of the characters, I don't want to give away too much, some of the characters bought it, and it went through the psychological reasons and developed their characters enough that you almost kind of felt sympathetic for them for going along with this, while still knowing that at least for me, kind of knowing that it is crap. But that was pretty trippy. So there were a couple times where I had that feeling where I'm like, I can't stop now. And that's cool. So I really liked that. Great.
Yeah. That was another theme that I wanted to explore. is the whole theme of conversion and deconversion. So when it comes to conversion, what I was thinking about is like a lot of secular people often or sometimes think, these ideas are so stupid or they're so illogical. Like, how can anybody believe this? And I was specifically thinking about people like my dad or other people that I've known. Like he's got a PhD from an Ivy League school in engineering. And you put any like technical, problem in front of him, he's going to find the answer. He'll explain like hydrology to you or something.
Right.
But for some reason, when it comes to politics and especially religion, all of a sudden he's like really, I don't want to say dumb, but so illogical. Like ask him like, Dad, why do you think that the Bible is, or your religion is true? And he'll say something like, well, the Bible, because it's in the Bible. Well, how do you know that the Bible is true? Well, because Jesus tells us in the Bible that this word is true. It's like,
whoa,
it doesn't make any sense, right?
Well,
but there's got to be a reason why, right?
And it's one of those things that I don't think I'm giving too much away. You didn't just have a believer and a non-believer. You had some people were believers who were kind of going along because it felt like the safe thing to do.
Yeah.
You had some people that were pretty much into it, but not sure. And you even had a couple people that got into it and then left. And the way they left wasn't the same for each person. And then, of course, there's the diehards that get in it, the true faithful, and they're committed just because they're committed. And then there's obviously some other characters that are in it because of the power grab they're able to achieve. And you're not really sure if they're in it because they realize it's a power grab or it just so happens that they enjoy the power after they already believe it. So the shades of all these different people was really refreshing. So it's not good guy versus bad guy. It's a lot of people struggling to figure out what's true.
Right. I'm glad you picked up on that because reality is complicated, right? And people are complicated and people are all different.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the fact there was those nuances, and I'm trying to carefully not ruin the story, but it's
traipsing over the plot, right?
Yeah, it's kind of set in medieval times, so it can kind of correlate to the spread of religions in our world, in Earth. And so that's kind of cool. And like I said, I can't even begin to get into the last fourth or fifth of the book.
Right.
I'm going to ruin it.
Right.
But that I did not see it coming. I had something else. So let's see, what will I call it? The big monster.
Right.
I was convinced that was something else. And when it got revealed, I was shocked. And then for a couple minutes, I was like, I got to read that over because it was so different from what I thought was going to happen that I kind of like felt like I didn't follow it. And I read it back and I'm like, okay, it makes sense. But then as I get a few more pages into it, I was like, oh my God. And then there was yet another twist right at the end.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I'm glad that happened. As the writer, you're always thinking like, I don't want to spoil things, but on the other hand, you don't want to just like, all of a sudden here it is. But yeah, cool. In general, I think, I was just trying to create this crazy science fiction world where, all these people can be put through different adventures. And so you get to see like all of the different like shades, like you were saying, like, how are they going to deal with this? How are they going to deal with these upheavals? And the major upheaval at the end was also, part of that whole scheme.
Yeah. And I'm just wondering, as I was reading it, would someone who's really into Christianity, would they suffer through it long enough to get hooked into the story? And I'm not sure that they would.
Right.
What do you think?
I don't think they would. I think if I had set my mind to really do it that way, it would have been a totally different book. Because the problem, and I guess the problem with memes or the problem with, religion as a virus. I sort of compare it to a virus a little bit.
Yeah.
Or a meme, as in something that's self-perpetuating, right?
Right.
And a cultural idea that self-perpetuates. It doesn't care about its host necessarily. It just wants to survive regardless of, what the host is doing. But anyways, unfortunately, the reality of people who are very much into cults and religions and strong ideologies is that you can't just show them some piece of evidence or some reasoning or any kind of logic. People will entrench themselves. Smart people will think of a million rationalizations. They'll be, you won't be able to do it. So it would have been a completely different book because you would have to not set off any defenses whatsoever.
Right. And clearly we weren't trying to avoid that. So
no, we wanted fireworks.
Yeah,
here.
but I could see maybe, I don't know, a middle of the road liberal Christian playing along for a while and then kind of having their flawed thought process exposed, which could be cool. But if someone's really into religion, they're not going to get past the first chapter or subchapter or whatever.
Yeah, definitely. And it's funny too because I knew it wasn't going to be for the straight up believer, and still I had to restrain myself the whole time. Be fair. Just try to write these extreme, give them every benefit of the doubt that you possibly can.
Yeah.
But obviously with a bias like mine, it's probably going to be really difficult to scrub it completely clean.
Sure.
To the point where it still means something,
Now, where can people buy the book? Are you in stores or is Amazon the best way?
Yeah, so it's just on Amazon. So you can get it as an e-reader or you can get it as a paperback.
Okay. Yeah, because I got the e-reader, and like I said, I struggled a little bit at the beginning, but it made sense why you did it that way. And so it ended up working. So if somebody buys it, and hopefully a whole bunch of people will buy it, hey, work through it because you're going to enjoy it. It's a very very good fun story, and a neat twist. I haven't really read anyone doing something like that with Christianity, so that was kind of cool.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I was also thinking. So I started this book long time ago. Probably more than 12 years ago, I've had this idea, worked on it on and off for about 10 years. And one of the things that I was thinking is that there was sort of a niche available. There's tons and tons of nonfiction about atheism.
Right.
But at the time, at least, it didn't seem like there were a lot of atheist novels. There were some peripheral, characters in movies like Contact or something like that. But I wanted one where it put atheists and religious ideas front and center, so that it's not a periphery thing. And also, maybe it doesn't achieve this so much, but I wanted to give a bit of empathy towards atheist characters, and in order to do that, I had to sort of shift everything. That's the reason why I had to shift things a bit. Maybe you could do it with total realism, but I was at least trying to do that.
Yeah, I like I said, I was actually very surprised how much I enjoyed it. So,
cool.
That's cool. Once again, everybody, it's called A God of Memes, and it's on Amazon, and it's a few bucks. I don't remember the price, but it wasn't bad at all. Is there anything else that we should go over before we wrap up?
No, I think that just about does it. Yeah, thank you so much for having me on, Phil. Really appreciate it.
I appreciate it, Sid. And of course, I really want to talk about details in the book, but I don't want to ruin it for everybody who's listening. Sid, again, thank you for being on The Phil Ferguson Show.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Phil.
I like reading the Bible. I was reading the Bible, found out Jesus had a little brother. Anybody know his name? James. When I read that, I was like, how much pressure was that? Jesus, your big brother? How many times do you have to hear, why come you can't be more like Jesus, James? Because you know, everybody probably thought that James could do the same thing Jesus could do, but he couldn't. He was just James. He wasn't James Christ. Remember the wedding banquet? Jesus turned water into wine. Everybody was amazed, but they don't tell you about the next banquet. Jesus left early. They started running out of wine. Everybody looked at James. It's like, man, last time this happened, your brother made some wine, dude. You just gonna stand there with your sandals on? You're not gonna... Can you make some Kool-Aid or something, man? You're not gonna do anything. And you know James had problems just like any other kid had problems. He'd try to follow his big brother around. So everywhere Jesus went, James followed him. That's what little brothers do. So if Jesus went there, so did James. I bet one time, James almost drowned. Oh, you just got that joke just now, didn't you? Jesus walked on water and James tried to just went. I'm sure James had problems. He would go to his parents with his problems. And his parents, especially his mom, was trying to throw him a bone once in a while. They'd pray over their food. They're like, Lord, we just thank you for this food. In James' name. James had problems. He would go to his parents with his problems, and you know what they would say? He'd be like, well, what would Jesus do, you know? Then they gave him a bracelet. And then he started selling those bracelets, you know? Made some money selling bracelets. What would be cool is a what would James do bracelet, right? Same initials, different meaning. Completely different meaning. You driving down the street, you get cut off in traffic. You fuss him out, your pastor gonna be like, yo, you got a what would Jesus do bracelet on? You're like, that's what would James do. Driving an imaginary car for a long time, isn't he? Also found out when Jesus was 12 years old, Mary and Joseph lost Jesus. They lost Jesus. And you know the first thing they had to do was pray. I wonder what that prayer must have sounded like. Joseph probably did the prayer. He was like, oh, God. Dear God, oh, forgiving God. You remember that Messiah you gave us? You got another one somewhere, man? We don't... That was the only begotten son? Okay, we're going to find him. We're going to find him.
You're listening to The Bill Ferguson Show.
Once again, thank you so much for listening to the show. And of course, thank you to the additional new people. Every week, there are more and more people going over to patreon.com/Phil and kicking in a few bucks to support the show. It's a very small part of my revenue, but it's a nice thing to get some recognition there via money. So if you like the show, if you've talked to me in the past, if you get benefit from the show and you'd like to go kind of offset my costs a little bit for the time and effort for making the show, I would appreciate it. And again, thank you to all the people that have already done that. That's patreon.com/Phil. And one more reminder, well, I'll give you a couple more in the next few weeks. We're collecting that money, doubling it again, and it's going to American Atheists to offset travel expense for students to get to the American Atheist Conference Easter weekend. I think it's around the 19th or 20th of April, around Cincinnati, Ohio, and they've started putting out who the speakers are, so go check that out on their website. That's atheists.org, and I hope to see you there. No reviews to read, But if you'd like to leave a 5-star review, the two places I know about are iTunes and Stitcher. If you like the show, you can go do that. Oh, and I almost forgot. The one thing that's weird, I had someone that called me and they didn't know what to do now, because what they had done was at the end of December, the very, very worst of the market correction, the big, terrible, awful December that we had with the stock market, they sold everything that they own and put it in cash. Well, as of today, the stock market is up about 11.5%. So they lost 18% over the quarter, which, of course, the whole year is -4, -5, because it went up most of the year, but the fourth quarter was terrible. And they got spooked and they sold it. And now the market is close to back, but, not quite. It's still down some from October, of course, but well ahead of what it was a year and 2 months ago, but up 11.5% in the last 2 months. And they've been sitting in cash. And so now it is a question, do I jump back in now? And this is the problem with any kind of market timing. It becomes a psychological mind fuck, because you don't know when to get in, you don't know when to get out. And you're racked with emotion and concern and pain and anxiety, and it takes a lot of the fun out of investing. So that's why I like to have a plan. You should have a plan. Your plan is going to be different from the other person's plan. It's going to be different based on your age. It's going to be different based on your portfolio and other investments that you have, or Social Security, all kinds of different things. But if you want to have an idea what your plan might be like, of course, you can contact me, Phil@PolarisFinancialPlanning.com. If you want, I can look at your current investments, your statements. Do not blindly send me your statements. Send me an email. Make sure that you've got the right place. We can set up a time to talk. You can send me your investment statements. You can send me your 401k portfolio options from work. Whatever, we can have a nice conversation. It might be 15 minutes. It might be 30 minutes. It might be a little longer. And if that helps you, then you go on your way. No cost, no charge. You don't have to pay me anything. I like doing this. I like helping people. Some people eventually do hire me. I was just talking to someone that hired me recently, and I was going over their 401k, and I said, wow, the choices that you've made in the 401k are pretty good. You've done a really good job. You must listen to the show because I really like your choices. And he says, Phil, don't you remember? We talked 3 years ago. And I go, what? He says, yeah, 3 years ago, I sent you all the information about my 401k and all the options that I had, and I'm invested in those things because you suggested them. And I go, oh, and he goes, well, Phil, I'll tell you what, you are consistent. And I'm like, well, good for me. Whew. Dodged that one. But so there's someone that I helped 3 years ago. No money, no fee, no cost, no nothing. I just helped him. And 3 years later, he's getting ready to retire and really wants a little more help on diversifying his portfolio, having a bunch of different options, and knowing how and what to pull out of on a year-to-year basis. And that's the kind of guidance and help that I can provide. So if that's something that interests you, of course, let me know. Anyway, I'm going to wrap it up. And again, I'll see you at the American Atheist Conference or somewhere else out on the road. I hope to see you soon. Until then, ciao.